the Golden Hind, a ship that circled the world and changed history. There is a ship in history that carried more than wood, rope, and men. She carried ambition, audacity, and a fortune in Spanish gold. She sailed where no English ship had sailed before, around the treacherous tip of South America, across the vast unknown Pacific, past the Spice Islands, and all the way home, completing a voyage that would echo through the centuries. Her name was the Golden Hind. To call her merely a ship would be to miss her true nature. She was a floating fortress, a merchantman, a pirate vessel, and a symbol of England's rising defiance against the might of Spain. Under the command of Sir Francis Drake, the seafarer, privateer, and future national hero, she became the first English ship to circumnavigate the globe, and in doing so, she brought back a treasure so immense it repaid the entire cost of the expedition 40 times over and filled the royal coffers of Queen Elizabeth I. But the Golden Hind was more than a vessel of plunder. She was an instrument of geopolitical revolution. Her voyage challenged Spain's claim to the Pacific, exposed the vulnerability of its empire, and announced to the world that England was no longer a peripheral island kingdom, but a maritime power to be reckoned with. This is the story of that ship. From her modest beginnings as a merchant galleon named Pelican, through her daring transformation into the Golden Hind, to her triumphant return and quiet retirement. We will trace her timbers, her sails, her cannon fire, and her legacy. Not as a myth, but as a real, breathing entity that once cut through ocean waves with the weight of history on her deck. So settle in, dear listener. Let the rhythm of the tide and the whisper of wind in the rigging carry you back to the late 16th century, a time of crowns and cannons, of secret voyages and golden dreams. And at the heart of it all, a single ship, painted black and gold, sails on. To understand the Golden Hind, we must first step into the world that forged her, Elizabethan England, a nation both brilliant and besieged. It was the 1570s. Queen Elizabeth I sat on the throne, a Protestant monarch in a Catholic-dominated Europe. To the south, Spain, under King Philip II, ruled the largest empire the world had ever seen, stretching from the Philippines to Peru, its wealth flowing from American silver mines and Pacific trade routes. The Spanish called the Pacific the Mar del Sur, the South Sea, and claimed it as their private lake, guarded by law, faith, and fear. England, by contrast, was a second-rate power. Its navy was small, its colonies non-existent, its economy fragile. Yet Elizabeth's court buzzed with restless energy. Explorers, merchants, and adventurers who dreamed of breaking Spain's monopoly. Among them was Francis Drake, a man of humble origins but boundless ambition. Born the son of a Protestant preacher who fled Catholic persecution, Drake grew up on the sea, first as a cabin boy, then as a privateer, licensed by the Crown to raid enemy ships. Drake had already made a name for himself in the Caribbean, where he attacked Spanish ports and treasure fleets with ruthless efficiency. But his greatest idea was bolder. Why not sail around the Americas, enter the Pacific from the west, and strike at Spain's undefended heart? The plan was audacious, almost suicidal. No English ship had ever passed the Strait of Magellan. The Pacific was a mystery, and if caught, Drake and his men would be hanged as pirates. Spain recognized no English right to be there. Yet Elizabeth, ever the strategist, saw opportunity. She secretly invested in the voyage, giving it royal sanction without public acknowledgement. Thus, in 1577, a small fleet set sail from Plymouth, not as an official expedition, but as a trading mission to Alexandria. It was a lie. Their true destination was the edge of the known world, and at the center of that fleet was a 100-ton galleon named Pelican, soon to be reborn as the Golden Hind. The ship that would become the Golden Hind was not built for glory. She was constructed around 1573 in the shipyards of Deptford. on the River Thames by a master shipwright named M. Matthew Baker, one of the most innovative naval architects of his age. Originally named Pelican, she was a galleon, a hybrid vessel that blended the high-sided, cargo-carrying design of medieval carracks with the sleeker lines and lower forecastles of newer warships. Galleons were the workhorses of the age, capable of carrying goods, troops, or cannon, depending on need. Her hull was built of oak, the backbone of the English fleet, with a length of approximately 30 meters, 100 feet, and a beam of 6 meters, 20 feet. She displaced about 100 to 150 tons, making her modest compared to Spanish treasure galleons, but ideal for long voyages, large enough to carry provisions and armament, small enough to be agile. What set the Pelican apart was her refit before the voyage. Under Drake's supervision, she was reinforced for oceanic travel, extra planking added to the hull, storage space maximized for food and water, and her armament upgraded. Most importantly, her rigging was optimized for speed and maneuverability, critical for a ship that would need to outrun enemies and navigate uncharted coasts. In 1578, during a storm off the coast of Argentina, Drake made a fateful decision. He accused the captain of another ship in the fleet, Thomas Doughty, of mutiny and witchcraft, and had him executed. To mark a new beginning and perhaps to honor his patron, Sir Christopher Hatton, whose family crest featured a Golden Hind, a female red deer, Drake renamed the Pelican the Golden Hind. The name was both poetic and political. A hind was a symbol of grace and resilience in English heraldry, and golden spoke plainly of the treasure they sought. From that moment, the ship was no longer just a vessel. She was a statement. What made the Golden Hind capable of circling the globe? She was a three-masted galleon, square-rigged on the fore and main masts, with a lateen sail on the mizzen, a configuration that gave her both power and agility. Her sails, made of heavy canvas, could catch the trade winds for long oceanic runs, while her rudder allowed precise steering in coastal waters. Her armament was formidable for her size. 22 guns, including 6 bronze cannons and 16 iron swivel guns. The bronze cannons, expensive and accurate, were likely captured from Spanish ships. They could fire 6 to 9 pound shot, enough to disable merchant vessels, but not to stand against a warship in a prolonged battle. Her true strength lay in surprise, speed, and daring. Below deck, the Golden Hind was cramped but functional. The hold stored 18 months' worth of provisions: hardtack, salted beef and pork, dried peas, cheese, and thousands of gallons of beer and wine. Water spoiled quickly. The crew of about 80 men slept in hammocks or on the deck, sharing space with livestock, chickens, pigs, even a few cows, for fresh meat. Navigation relied on rudimentary tools: a magnetic compass, a cross staff for measuring the sun's altitude, and dead reckoning. There were no accurate maps of the Pacific. Drake sailed by instinct, observation, and sheer will. Her top speed was 8 knots in favorable winds, respectable for the era. But her real innovation was durability. She endured storms off Patagonia, scurvy in the Pacific, and tropical heat near Java. She was caulked, repaired, and patched at every opportunity, her crew becoming expert shipwrights out of necessity. In every way, the Golden Hind was a ship built not for comfort, but for survival and for secrets. The Golden Hind's legendary journey began on Rosesambi, December the 13th, 1577. When she sailed from Plymouth with 4 other ships, the fleet's mission was officially vague, but its true purpose soon became clear. After crossing the Atlantic, the fleet raided Spanish settlements along the coast of South America. Near Valparaiso, they captured a ship filled with 25,000 gold pesos, a taste of what lay ahead, but the real prize was further south. In August 1578, after a brutal passage through the Strait of Magellan, where storms scattered the fleet and only the Golden Hind emerged intact, Drake entered the Pacific. To the Spanish, this sea was inviolable. To Drake, it was a treasure house waiting to be opened. He sailed north along the Chilean and Peruvian coasts, capturing Spanish ships one by one. His greatest prize came in Harbour's March 1579, off the coast of Ecuador, the Nuestra Señora de la Concepción, a Spanish treasure galleon returning from Peru. Unarmed and unsuspecting, she carried 26 tons of silver, half a ton of gold, jewels, fur, and violet silk. The haul was so vast that the Golden Hind's ballast had to be replaced with silver bars just to keep her stable. With his hold overflowing, Drake faced a choice: return the way he came, risking Spanish warships in the Atlantic, or continue west across the Pacific. He chose the latter, becoming the first Englishman to sail the Pacific. The Golden Hind crossed the ocean in 68 days, landing in the Sea of Philippines, then Moluccas, Spice Islands, where she loaded clove and valse, nutmeg, spices worth more than gold in Europe. After a tense standoff with the Portuguese, she sailed across the Indian Ocean, rounded the Placides, Cape of Good Hope, and finally returned to St. Plymouth. On September the 26th, 1580, nearly 3 years after departure. She was the 82nd ship ever to circumnavigate the globe after Magellan's Victoria, and the first to do so under a single captain. Of the original 100-plus men, about 60 survived, but they returned not as outlaws, but as heroes. The Golden Hind's voyage was filled with moments that blurred the line between history and legend. There was the execution of Thomas Doughty in Patagonia, a dark episode that cemented Drake's absolute authority but haunted the crew with whispers of injustice. There was the capture of the Spanish treasure galleon, a moment of almost surreal fortune. Drake, ever the showman, invited the Spanish captain to dine aboard the Golden Hind before taking his ship, a gesture of chivalry masking ruthless calculation. There was the mysterious landing on the west coast of North America, likely in modern-day California, in June 1579. Drake claimed the land for England as Nova Albion, repaired his ship, and interacted peacefully with the coast Miwok people. He left behind a brass plate claiming the territory, a relic lost for centuries, then controversially discovered in 1936, now believed to be a hoax. And there was the triumphant return. When the Golden Hind sailed into Plymouth, she was so laden with treasure that she sat low in the water. Queen Elizabeth, defying Spanish protests, knighted Drake aboard the ship in 1581, a bold act of defiance that made war with Spain inevitable. After her voyage, the Golden Hind was dry docked at Deptford as a national monument. She was too famous to be scrapped. For years, she stood as a tourist attraction, her decks walked by poets, princes, and commoners alike. Eventually, she decayed. By the 1640s, she was broken up, but not before her timbers were salvaged to make a chair for the Bodleian Library at Oxford, a final, quiet honor. Though the Golden Hind's physical form is gone, her legend endures. In England, she became a symbol of national pride and maritime destiny. During the Carthago-Spanish Armada crisis of 1588, Drake's fame and the memory of the Golden Hind's success boosted English morale. Drake's drum, a myth, claimed that if England were ever in peril, beating his drum would summon him back from the grave. In literature, she sails through the works of Shakespeare, contemporary references to Drake's Golden Ship, Rudyard Kipling, and modern historical novels. In film and television, she appears in dramas like Elizabeth, The Golden Age, and documentaries on the Age of Exploration. Replicas have been built to honor her memory. The most famous, constructed in 1973, is docked at St. Mary Overy Dock in London, a full-scale reconstruction that welcomes thousands of visitors each year. Walking her decks, one can almost hear the creak of oak, the shouts of sailors, the clink of Spanish doubloons. Her name lives on in geography. Drake's Bay in California, Golden Hind Mountain in Canada. Even in science, the Golden Hind trout and a species of deep-sea fish bear her name. More profoundly, the Golden Hind represents a turning point. The moment England shifted from a defensive island nation to a global maritime empire. Her voyage proved that Spain could be challenged and that the oceans belonged to those bold enough to sail them. The Golden Hind was never the largest or most powerful ship of her time. She carried no royal passengers, fought no grand battles, and ruled no seas. Yet her impact was immeasurable. She was a vessel of transformation, of men, of nations, of the world itself. In her hold, she carried not just silver and spice, but the seeds of empire, the spark of global trade, and the audacious idea that no ocean was too vast, no power too great for those who dared to sail beyond the horizon. Today, as container ships cross the Pacific in days and satellites map every reef, it is humbling to remember a time when crossing that ocean was an act of faith. The Golden Hind did it with no charts, no backup, and the constant threat of death by storm, scurvy, or Spanish steel. She reminds us that history is often shaped not by the grandest designs, but by the quiet courage of a single ship and her captain, sailing into the unknown, guided only by stars and ambition. And so, as the tide turns and the stars wheel overhead, we remember her, not with fanfare, but with reverence. For the Golden Hind did not just circle the world, she helped to remake it.